Here to discuss, former California Superior Court Judge Ladoris Cordell, Glenn Kirshner, a former federal prosecutor and MSNBC legal analyst, and Ian Millhiser, a senior correspondent at Vox, where he focuses on courts, the Constitution and democracy. Thank you all for joining me this evening. Glenn, let me start with you. I want to get your reaction to that effort in Georgia to try and impeach, to try and remove DA Fonnie Willis. Is this kind of personal, targeted attack on an individual prosecutor just the logical, if depressing, next step of the GOP's assault on our justice system?
Yeah, I don't know how low some of these state legislatures will go. I would like to try to find a little bit of silver lining, behind that big dark cloud that you just laid out for us at the end. The one place I think I can find a little bit of optimism is, over the last several years, the courts have, by and large, held, right? They held in the election challenge litigation, even the Supreme Court. I'm not the biggest fan these days, but even the Supreme Court refused to give Donald Trump any play, any audience as he went about trying to overturn the election's results. This is some ugly stuff being done by the state legislature, but I still want to believe that these statutes will be challenged. They will move into the courts, and I still believe the courts will hold. Although, I now look back at my 30 years practicing in courts, both military and civilian, both federal and local, both trial and appellate, and I always felt like it was a politics-free zone, and I don't think my experience in that regard was unique. But boy, the Republicans trying to go after elected district attorneys now feels just really ugly and dangerous.
Ian, let's move on to Wisconsin. You've written extensively about gerrymandering there. Is this threat of impeaching Protasewicz just Republicans throwing everything at the wall in order to prevent their state from actually functioning as a democracy?
I mean, that's exactly right. So let's be clear what's happened in Wisconsin. The Republican legislature has been gerrymandered past the point of democracy since about 2010. In 2018, Democrats won 54% of the popular vote for the state assembly. Republicans still got a supermajority in the legislature. So this is a virtually impervious gerrymander. So Democrats have now taken every step they can possibly take. They tried to elect a state legislature that would undo the gerrymanders, couldn't do it because the gerrymanders were too powerful. They filed federal lawsuits. There was a case called Gill v. Whitford that went all the way to the Supreme Court. There was a case called Rucho, where the U.S. Supreme Court said, we're not going to do anything at all, and no federal court can ever do anything about partisan gerrymandering, period. So that option was out. And then Democrats said, well, we still want our state to be a democracy, so we are going to elect a majority on the state Supreme Court, and then the state Supreme Court can strike down this gerrymander. And whether it's the state legislature stepping into impeachment or a federal court stepping in through some kind of injunction, if something like that happens, the message that would be sent to the people of Wisconsin is essentially Wisconsin is an oligarchy. There is a legislative body that, nominally is elected by the people, but in practice can only be held by Republicans, and all of the powers that be have one by one taken away all of the levers that can be used to do something about this gerrymander until there's nothing left.
And just moving over to North Carolina, Judge, as a black woman who has served on the bench, how blatantly racist is it for Republicans in North Carolina to go after the only black woman on the Supreme Court there for speaking about the subject of racial bias?
Well, Mehdi, we have been here before. After the Civil War, during Reconstruction, formerly enslaved men had the vote and used it to elect African-American men into office throughout the South. So let's take Georgia. During Reconstruction, 69 African-Americans were elected by black voters as state delegates and state senators. However, when the federal government, on orders from President Andrew Johnson, withdrew federal troops from the South, Reconstruction came to an end, Jim Crow began. In Georgia, white Southerners used terror, intimidation, and the KKK to, in their words, redeem the state. 1/4 of Georgia's duly elected black officials were killed, they were threatened, they were beaten, or they were jailed By 1906, there was just one black legislator who was elected by black voters in Georgia. So what does this have to do with today? Well, after the murder of George Floyd and what seemed to be a racial awakening in America, we were in a 21st century reconstruction where we saw efforts to reform the criminal legal system and to bring racial equity to all manner of institutions. But I fear now, as in Georgia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, that history repeats. We are seeing blatant efforts by the GOP to remove our lawfully elected judges, state representatives, and prosecutors who are almost exclusively African American. I believe what we are witnessing today is Reconstruction Redux.
Yeah, it's truly scary in some of these places. Glenn, we've talked about Trump's legal problems, criminal legal problems. Let's talk about his constitutional problems. There's been a push to disqualify Donald Trump from holding office using the 14th Amendment, citing his actions related to January the 6th. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment says you can't run for office, you can't hold office if you've been involved in insurrection. We've seen a few lawsuits now from activists referencing the amendment. We've seen some secretaries of state suggesting they're going to at least look into this provision, including Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, who said she planned to speak with her counterparts in other battleground states. Is this a plan, a legal plan, a constitutional plan worth pursuing?
Well, it looks like this train is barreling down the tracks, and it looks like lawsuits will be brought, Mehdi, whether state election officials or secretaries of state put Donald Trump on the ballot. That will be challenged in court. Whether they decline to put Donald Trump on the ballot, that will be challenged in court. And, you know, I have to say, with Judge Luttig on the right, Professor Tribe on the left, and the two law professors who are associated with the Federalist Society, Professors Bowd and Paulson, you know, there's one sentence in their lengthy law review article that is as provocative as it is definitive when they say, regarding the self-executing nature of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, they say every official, state and federal, who judges or certifies qualifications for office must disqualify Donald Trump. I mean, that is definitive. I think it's going to be a great day for lawyers because they're going to be fully employed with all the legal challenges that will be brought.
Well, Glenn, interestingly enough, you mentioned the Supreme Court earlier having not taken Trump's side during his big lie campaign. I want to bring Ian in here. If this ends up at the Supreme Court, which I assume it will be, if a state takes the radical step, let's call it a radical step of disqualifying one of the two major presidential candidates from running on the basis that it's a violation of the 14th Amendment, what will the Supreme Court with 3 Trump justices do?
Yeah, I mean, we've been looking for one neat trick to save us from Donald Trump since 2016. And I'll be honest, I don't think that there is one. I think legal academics can argue over this legal theory, and I think that it is a perfectly fine legal theory to put in a law review article. I think it is very unlikely that the Republican supermajority on the U.S. Supreme Court can buy it. And ultimately, I think the message that every single American needs to internalize is that if you want to get rid of Donald Trump, you can't expect the courts to save you. You can't expect a prosecutor to save you. You can't expect anyone to save you but yourself. The only thing you can do is get out and vote for Joe Biden and hope that a lot of other people do as well.
Judge Cordell, 30 seconds left. I want to give you the last word. Do you think this ends up before the Supreme Court, and what do you think they do, in your opinion?
Yes, it very well could end up before the Supreme Court, and we will know what will happen because it'll be 6, the supermajority 6, who will do whatever they want because they can. Hopefully, they'll follow the law, but there's just no guarantee. So I'm not particularly hopeful, but I do think if this is brought, it will end up with the court.
I would remind everyone that Republican Senate leader Mitch McConnell called January 6th an insurrection and said Donald Trump was to blame for it. Judge Lodoris Cordell, Glenn Kirshner, and Ian Millhiser, thank you all for your analysis. Much appreciated. Coming up next.